everyone, welcome back to Faith and Flour. If you're new here, my name is Robin, and in today's video I'm going to talk to you about meal planning, batch cooking, and this cookbook which I have been enjoying so much called Cook Once, Eat All Week by Cassie Joy Garcia. I showed you some of our family's favorite week's worth of recipes back in the warmer months, but now that the weather is cool, I have revisited the cookbook again, trying weeks that are more seasonally appropriate for the colder weather. I'm going to show you week 19 from the cookbook in today's video, but before we get started, I want to address a concern or a comment that was reoccurring from my previous videos about the title of the cookbook. It's called Cook Once, Eat All Week, but you are preparing only 3 meals. And a lot of people had a criticism about that. But I just want to say to you, if you are already batch cooking and preparing 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7 meals in advance for the week, then you are doing great. But I would say that's not typical for the typical American household. So I think this is a great way to get started on batch cooking. She really takes all of the guesswork out of it for you, and I'll show you that in the video, and makes this just so simple and so easy. And for me, having 3 meals prepared in advance so that I only need to spend about 10 minutes on that night when we want to eat it just makes my life so stress-free when it comes to meal planning. And so that's why I want to share these videos with you. The book includes 26 weeks worth of dinners, each centered around 1 protein, 1 vegetable, and 1 starch. And then she shows you how to create 3 very different meals using these components. All of the recipes are gluten-free, which is great, but you will not need any special ingredients, anything that would be hard to find or that you're not already familiar with. I will put a link to the cookbook down in the description box, and I'll also have it in my Amazon store to make it easy for you to find. Or you could do what I did, and that was find it at your local library and give it a try before you commit to buy. Week 19 calls for pork shoulder, Brussels sprouts, and sweet potatoes. Of course, there are additional ingredients that you'll need to prepare the meals, but she makes that very easy for you by supplying this weekly ingredient list. I find it really easy to take the things off the fresh, frozen, and meat and dairy list and plug them into an online grocery order. The amounts that she gives for everything you will use entirely, so you're not going to have a lot of leftover ingredients. And the things that she has on the pantry and the seasoning list are things that I usually already have on hand. If there are a couple of things that I'm not usually keeping stocked, I can either omit those or add them to my grocery order. But like I said, these ingredients are pretty basic, simple things, and things that you will continue to use, so you're not going to have a lot of waste at the end of the week. I love her instructions for prep day. They're very concise, easy to follow, and she orders things for you so that you will maximize your time in the kitchen and you will be able to multitask following her instructions, and you won't waste any time. Usually the protein is the thing that's going to take the longest, so that's what we start with, and she gives you 3 different options for how to prepare the pork for this week. You can use an oven method, you can use an Instant Pot, or a slow cooker, and I chose to use my Instant Pot. All 3 methods are easy, but of course the Instant Pot is the fastest, and all you'll need to do is to cut up your pork into smaller pieces so that they'll fit well into the Instant Pot and cook a little bit faster. Salt them and add them to the Instant Pot along with a 1/2 cup of water. Seal the lid onto the Instant Pot, press the pressure cook or manual button, and set the timer for 90 minutes. While the pork is cooking, you can move on to preparing the sweet potatoes and Brussels sprouts. They can be cooked together in the oven, so that's a huge time and energy saver. Wash and dry the sweet potatoes, and then to prepare them to go in the oven, line a baking sheet with some parchment paper, poke a few holes in the sweet potatoes, and then rub them with a little extra virgin olive oil. And as you can see, I reversed those steps. So I would definitely suggest paying attention to the order, because if you try to poke holes in the sweet potatoes after oiling them, they get a little slippery. After washing the Brussels sprouts, cut the stem ends off and then halve them. Toss them with some olive oil and salt, and then spread them out on a lined baking sheet, and you can put them in the oven along with the sweet potatoes. Next step is to cut the onion into wedges, and this week calls for 1 large onion, but mine were rather small, so I decided to do 2, plus we like onions. So cut the onion in half lengthwise, and then cut each half into about 4 wedges, or quarter them, so that you have a total of about 8 per onion. Next, I started preparing the aioli, and it's basically a mayonnaise-based sauce for this week. I skipped preparing a red bell pepper because it was missing from my grocery order. So I just omitted it, and the recipes came out fine. If I were to do it all over again, I would include it though. I'm sure it makes a great addition. For the aioli, you just mix together a half a cup of mayonnaise, 2 cloves of garlic, a tablespoon of fresh lemon juice, and a pinch of fine sea salt. You just whisk these things together and then save them in a container for use later in the week. Once the sweet potatoes and Brussels sprouts were done, I let them sit on the counter to cool a bit, and then I transferred them into sealable containers to store in the refrigerator for use later in the week. I used a little bit of downtime I had before the meat was ready to tackle the dishes. There were surprisingly few things in my sink, and this is one of the bonuses of doing batch cooking. You get all of this out of the way early in the week as well. When the cook time is complete, remove the pork from the pot. Place 1/3 of it in a container labeled Harvest Dinner, and then shred the remaining 2/3 of the meat with 2 forks, removing the excess fat. After that's finished, you'll transfer 4 cups of the shredded pork into a container that is labeled Bowls, and the remaining 3 cups to another container labeled Stuffed Potatoes. Store the containers of pork in the refrigerator to use later in the week. After that, you'll have a few more dishes to do, and then your refrigerator is stocked for the week with the ingredients that you're going to need to make 3 amazing meals. First up is smashed sweet potato and pork bowls. And before I go any further, I want to let you know that these 3 recipes were a huge hit at our house. My husband was actually out of town, so it was me and my 2 sons who were in their 20s, and they loved it and said that they would love for me to make this week again. They are not generally fans of Brussels sprouts, so I wasn't sure how that was going to go over, but they love them prepared this way. There was no issue whatsoever, and I can highly recommend all 3 recipes. To make the smashed sweet potatoes, you'll take half of the sweet potatoes that you prepared, peel them, and then cut them crosswise into 1-inch thick rounds and place them on a lined baking sheet, and then mash them down with a spatula to about a 1/4 inch thickness. Brush the sweet potatoes with melted butter and sprinkle with a teaspoon of coarse sea salt. Bake for 15 minutes until slightly browned and crisp on top. While the potatoes are cooking, you can prepare the pork. So just add some oil to a pan along with the shredded pork, oregano, salt, and pepper, and you cook for about 3 to 4 minutes until the pork is crisp. Then flip and cook for an additional 2 to 3 minutes until it is brown and crisp on the other side. Remove the pork from the pan and set aside, and then you can add the Brussels sprouts to the same pan, basically just to warm them up for about 4 or 5 minutes. To assemble the bowls, place 2 or 3 sweet potato rounds in each bowl and divide the pork and Brussels sprouts evenly among the bowls. Then drizzle with the aioli before serving. And as you can see, I'm just making 3 servings out of this meal because there's just 3 of us. I think I probably would want a little more if there were 4 because we have 4 adults, but I'd say if you have 2 adults and a couple of kids, this would be just perfect. Prep time is listed as 5 minutes and cook time 15, and I would say that's very accurate. This meal comes together very easily and quickly, and as I said, it was delicious. The second meal is Harvest Sheet Pan Dinner. I love a sheet pan meal. It couldn't be easier. You put all the ingredients on the same pan, so that also means cleanup is a cinch as well. After gathering the ingredients that you prepared earlier in the week, you'll cut apples into 1/2-inch wedges, discarding the core. And then in a medium-sized bowl, you'll toss the apples and the onion wedges in a tablespoon of olive oil and thyme and spread it out on the lined baking sheet and bake for 15 minutes until the apples and the onions start to soften. While the apples and onions are in the oven cooking, cut the pork shoulder into 1-inch slices. After that, you'll whisk together some olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and garlic powder and toss the pork in this mixture. This sort of sauce or marinade gives so much flavor to the pork, and it really brings out the flavor of the apples in this recipe. Bake for an additional 15 minutes until the pork is brown. After this, remove it from the oven, let it cool slightly, and serve. There are so many different flavors and textures going on in this dish, and the combination cannot be beat. It was delicious and so very different from the previous night's meal. I decided at the last minute to serve it along with a tossed salad. This was nothing special. I just tossed everything together with a little store-bought dressing, and it really did the job of completing the meal. And as I said, this was a hit as well. The third and final meal for this week is Southwestern stuffed sweet potatoes. These stuffed sweet potatoes are packed full of the sort of Tex-Mex flavors that my family loves. Things like garlic powder, cumin, paprika, and chili powder. So I hit my spice drawer to gather those up. And then it was easy to gather up the rest of the ingredients that I had prepared earlier in the week to complete this meal. First, I cut the sweet potatoes in half lengthwise and then scoop the flesh into a large bowl, reserving the skins. This was very easy to do because the skins come off the sweet potatoes very easily after they have been baked this way. So you do have to be a little bit careful to leave a tiny bit of flesh in there to help the cups or the sweet potato halves sort of hold their shape. Add all of the spices and some salt to the sweet potato flesh, and then stir in the shredded pork, bell pepper if you have it, corn, and lime juice, and stir until everything is evenly incorporated. Scoop the mixture into the sweet potato skins and bake for 15 minutes. While the sweet potatoes bake, chop the cilantro and set that aside. After 15 minutes, remove the stuffed sweet potatoes from the oven, top with the cheese, and bake for an additional 10 minutes or until the cheese is brown and bubbly. Garnish with the chopped cilantro and serve. The prep time was 12 minutes and the cook time just 25. The portions may look small, but don't let that fool you. This is extremely filling. You could also serve a salad or something along with this, but we found that this alone was more than enough, and the sweet potatoes are just absolutely packed with nutrients, so I feel that this was a really nice complete meal. Of all the weeks that I have tried out of this recipe book, I feel that this was amongst the easiest, and we enjoyed every recipe thoroughly, so this one was definitely a keeper, definitely one that I'm going to be doing again before the winter's over. I hope that you found today's video helpful. If you liked it, be sure to give me a thumbs up. That really does help out my channel. And if you'd like to see more videos from this cookbook, please let me know. There are several other weeks that I have prepared and I would love to do it again and film it for you guys. So let me know that down in the comments. If you're new here at Faith and Flour, I just want to say welcome, and I want to invite you to subscribe. Subscribing is easy and free. All you have to do is click on the icon, and if you activate the bell, you'll get a notification every time I upload a new video, so you won't miss out on anything. Thank you so much for spending your time with me here today. I always look forward to hearing from you in the comments, so make sure you say hello down there, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, have a great week.
Thank you.